Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Casco. There. Oh, yeah. I can see. It doesn't matter where you message. So that works. That's great. Uh, see what I do disappear on stream now. So I can test. Is anything? Oh, it actually is. I guess. Well, can you try doing it yourself? Yeah. I actually didn't have the chat box open, so I didn't see the stream stuff. Can you? Oh, it is working. I just don't have any sounds that would give me feedback on this. Okay, so I'll have to configure that later. As long as it works, that's fine, I guess. Mm. Do you, do you have like the mod permissions and stuff? Because I had like a lot of bots last time, and I don't know how was I supposed to get rid of them. Okay, well, either way, I can just do my own thing. So what I want to do today is program the editor feature for the tower defense. Either ban them one by one or ignore. I see. So what I'll do is I'll create a new scene, and that's going to be the editor. Now I'm going to make slight changes to the main menu, so we'll actually have the editor become available. There you go, like so. That's going to be the editor button. Map editor, like so. Wait, what do we have here? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to just quickly add this to the build order. And let's make it work within the editor. So before I go into the editor script, let's just make it so we can trigger the editor from inside the game. Like so. So the same way I was adding buttons for starting the game, we'll just add another button to trigger the editor, and we'll just use scene management to trigger the editor scenes. So since we added it to load order, it's under load order number 2. So opens editor, and we'll call this start map editor, like so. And that's all we really need for the editor to play from start. We'll just change this to editor like so. One thing that I wanted to change for the start is, so currently we just start the game, but what I really wanted to do is have 4 separate levels. So I'm not going to do the code for it now, I'm just going to set up the panels. So once we select start, there's going to be a new pop-up box like so. And we're just going to have 4 boxes. So this is going to be panel map select. Yeah, it was weird. That's all I can say. Just weird. So I'm gonna have 4 different images for 4 different levels, and I'm just gonna leave it as that for now, I guess. Actually, let's just add a grid component. So grip layout like so. Let's position it in middle right, and let's space it out a little bit like so. And this is good enough for now. Just gonna name each image level 3, level 4, 2, and level 1. Later on we can add images for the lever select. So now moving on to the editor, there's two things that we need for the editor. One is a camera that can be moved around, which will be added later, and the editor itself. So I'll just create an empty game object, and that's going to be our map editor. Now here we will have to have, let's just create a new folder, map editor, like so. Where are we? There we go. So here we will need to have a canvas. Now the canvas will let us select how big our map is going to be, and it will let us change between the available blocks. So on the left side, I'll have our panel, like here. It's going to be the panel for the editor. Now the editor will have our save, load level, select level section. It will have all of our components that we can build. So first, let's do the panel for saving and selecting the map. So we'll just add a little drop down. The drop down will let us select what level we are going to work on. Panel, I guess it's going to be level settings. And we will also have an image. Now we'll have an image to save the current level, reset the level to default, or just remove all the changes in the specific instance. And we'll have a little icon in the corner which will let us hide in the entire box, just so it doesn't get in the way, like so. Now set up the size nicely in here. Let's make sure it's the same width and height everywhere. Actually, let's make it 65 by 65. Actually, it's still too big. Let's keep it as 55 by 55. Yeah, that should be... No, that's still too big. Okay, that will be good enough for now. Just going to leave them here in the corner, not going to bother. Actually, since it slightly bothers me, I'll move it around. Okay. I'm just going to attach the anchor points so there's no issues with the scaling, although it shouldn't really matter. So this is going to be the save button, save level. This is going to be the reset to the default. And finally, this is going to be the hide dock. So by dock, I mean this entire panel. And then finally, we will have our drop down, which is going to be the select level drop down. And we'll just need some text right above it to tell the user who's making the map what it actually does. Like so. So this is going to be our text select level. Now we'll have select level above. So the user knows they can select level here. And for the options, we'll pre-create 4 options each for each level. So we'll have level 1, level 2, level 3, and finally level 4. Now, the way we're going to handle levels is by using scriptable objects. Wait, 1 second. So in our scriptable objects folder, we're going to create another folder called level. And in our script class, we'll actually create a new folder called base. Where are the base classes from? Oh, and okay, so we can just remove that. So in here, we'll create a new C# class, and we're going to call this level. Now, if we open the class, we can remove the default code. We're going to inherit from scriptable objects instead, and we'll create a brand new asset menu. File name is going to be a new level. New level, and finally order, it doesn't matter, so we're just going to leave it as 0. Now, each of our tiles will probably have the, well, X and Y position. So it's going to be public int Y, public int X. So position on the X axis, and then position on the Y axis. In reality, Y is going to be a Z, but it's easier to understand if we put it as a vector 2 instead of a vector 3. Each of our nodes will have an enum, so we'll type in a public enum, and we'll call that enum type of terrain. Our terrain will come in 3 types. Will come as grass, dirt, and path. Like so. Now, let's see what we actually, real quickly, what do we have here? Okay. Hello? Okay, that's fine, that's fine. So, either way, going back to our level. So now that we have a basic level, we can go into our scriptable objects folder, right-click, create a new level. Interesting. The tower and the enemies are in the same subcategory. I'm just going to fix it real quick by going into the scriptable objects, selecting the base tower, and changing this to tower here, like so. Okay, so once we select level, I guess we also want to have another button which is going to be, oh, everything stretching. No, let's leave it as that. So we'll have another panel right above that, which will just generate, which will let us generate a new level from scratch, or generate a level based on the options we've currently selected. So let me set this up. So here we will have a button, and the button will be generate level. So generating a level will regenerate a new level from scratch, ignoring everything else that we already had. We actually don't need so much space for this panel. So let's just make it smaller and actually put the bottom to stretch across the entire panel. So this is the panel generate level. Now the two finals elements that I can think of for now that we'll need to add is the option to switch between different blocks that we've currently selected. So we will create another panel, and this panel will have the block selection. Now here we'll first start off by creating a text at the very top of the panel, and that will tell us which block is currently selected. So I'll just say selected block and then the name of the block. Like so. And we will have 3 different images for each of the terrain types that we can have in the game. So let's start off with, actually, rather than having the text here, we're just going to move the text outside. Like so. And we'll just put images inside of this panel in case we want to have more blocks in the future. So the first one's going to be image grass block. We'll have our grass block, we'll have our dirt block, and we'll finally have our path block. Like so. And now let's create a grid layout component, make everything smaller, make some space in between, maybe make it slightly bigger. No, 60 was fine. And that's good enough for this. And the final section that we'll have is for drawing the path, but that's going to be added slightly later once we have the entire level working. So generate level, there we go, like so. We would technically need some images, so I'm just going to whip out amazing paint skills. There you go. Let's save this as grass block image, and we'll just change this to a brown. Maybe can find another shade of brown, slightly browner. Like so. Where's the file? Save this. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing for the path. Actually, go away. No, that looks bad. Better if it's, yeah, fully gardened, like so. There you go. And that's going to be our path block. Okay, now that we have this pointless stuff out of the way. Hello. I'm in the process of programming a level editor for this little project that I'm working on. And I decided to open my best software paint to add in the icons. actually. Where are we? Middle, upper center, and top padding. Good enough for now. And now if we go into the images and just drag in each block, there you go. So these will generate our little blocks for us. Now, if we go into our prefabs, we have our tile. Now, for the map generator, it's gonna still use these 4 blocks, but it's gonna be slightly different because we don't need the tile. Oh, sure. So if we go into the sample scene, so what I've currently done is a so we have an option to so we have a simple map which is not pre-generated. We have an option to place towers around the map. The placement is a little bit off, but I'll be working on that after the editor is fixed. And the game can spawn in enemies that can be killed if you shoot by the towers. Once I finish the editor, I'll be fixing some of the issues and then making more enemies and towers. But I want to make a map editor before I move on with anything so far. And that's about it. Yeah, I think this is 3 hours of streaming, 1 hour a day so far. If I'm correct. So I'm going to remove this and I'll actually unpack this prefab. I don't want this to be a prefab anymore. I'm just going to call it tile editor tile. I'm going to make a brand new folder called editor, and this is where I'll just put all of my editor prefabs into. And I'll make a well, 2 sets of classes. So I'll call the map editor generator, which is what's going to generate our map every time we select the mouse button. And finally, everything is frozen. And secondly, I'll be adding a editor tile. So the editor tile will be what we'll click on every time to change the type of the block that we've interacted with. So in here, I'm just going to remove the default code. I'll make a private game object. And this is going to be an array of our tile types, like so. And we'll simply drag in every single tile type, like so. And that's good enough for now. So when we generate our map, we'll generate the blocks, and then we're going to use this UI here to assign a different block. So when we first generate the map, it's all going to be just the green tile block. Have I put in the prefabs? Yes, I have. So I can just apply this for now, and now I can move into generating of the map. Actually, now I've realized we want to have a different height and different width for our map. So this is something that will have to be added to the panel. So I'll just quickly add, actually, let's just leave it for now. We'll just use a defaulted for 10 for now, and that's going to be good enough. So if we go back to our scripts, map editor, open the map editor. I don't need any other classes for now. So we need now the following. So we need a some sort of a height and some sort of width for a map. And we will also need a reference to an empty block that will spawn. So that's going to be That's going to be our tile block. And then map like so. There we go. We will need a list of our blocks, so it's not going to be, well, not a list, an array of, what do we call it, editor tile. And it's going to be a two-dimensional array because we want to store two sets of variables, which is going to be their height and their width of our block. And that's going to be called map blocks, like so. So an array of all the map components. What do we have? Oh, sorry, Casco. I just read it now. I didn't do it. I didn't turn it off. This is why I'm confused, because last time I thought I had it on. It didn't appear to work. So I'm really confused with the alerts thingy. Maybe I just set it up wrong, and I have to have, I don't know, maybe I have to have the browser page constantly open for the alerts to work. I don't know. I might just have to redo it or something, because I really don't know how it works. It's confusing. Either way, so we'll have a public void, and that's going to be our function called generate map. And this is where we click on the bottom, it generates the entire map. Now, we'll generate the map based on a level, but for now, we're just going to leave the levels as empty. So we'll either generate from the current level or generate empty. And this is what we're going to do for now. We're just going to generate empty for now, because level selection will be added slightly later. So now we will take our map blocks and we're going to make it equal to a new editor tile, and that's going to be our height and our width, because we want our two-dimensional array to be as big as our map is, so how tall it is and how wide it is. And then we'll just loop twice. We'll loop on our x-axis and on our y-axis. And of course, the x-axis is going to loop around our width, and y is going to loop around the height, like so. I kind of now wish I did it in reverse. Either way, what's going to happen is every time we loop through, we will instantiate a new object. So that's going to be called a block on terrain, and we'll just instantiate our tile block. And I'm going to cast it as a game object, so we can then modify its position. So if we do a block on terrain, and then we can set its transform.local. We can set its position to new vector 3, and that's going to be our width, height. Actually, we're going to keep this as a 0, and we're going to put height here. The reason, no, x and y. There we go, like so. The reason why we're leaving the y, which is up as 0, is because up is usually the jump for games, which is not something that we'll have. So that's going to stay as a 0. Actually, another thing that we have to add is a new transform, and we're going to call it the map parent. And that's going to be the object that we're going to attach our entire map system to. and we'll just set our map parent to this. So to the game object that has the map editor. Now that we have this, we'll just change the name of this block just so we can debug anything if it's necessary. And we'll just put, because I called it X, now I get confused. So it's and Y, like so. There we go. And finally, what we want to do is we want to now get our array of blocks, and in here we'll just do the X and Y, and we're going to make it equal to block on terrain. Oh, I have an urgent call. 1 second. Let's mute the mic. Okay, I'm back. So what I'm going to do now is simply just get the component of our what do we call it, of our tile that we spawned, like so, and that is going to be enough to spawn our entire grid onto the world. So now if we set everything up, we attach our map editor script here, and we'll just add the prefab from our editor in here. We should have a fully functioning grid. That was not instantiated. Oh, that's right. Actually, what we need to do is for it to generate is to assign this to this bottom and generate map like so. Just double check. Yep, everything's fine. Oh, why is it not generating? Let's add. What? Ah, that's right. We haven't actually set height and width to anything, so it was actually doing running the code, but it was looping from 0, so we didn't really get far. And there we go. Now, with this, we have actually successfully generated a small grid like we wanted. There we go. Now, the biggest problem now is with the camera. So what I'll do for now is we're actually not setting the parent of the actual object. So let's just do this while we're at it. So I'm just going to do block on transform.set parent, and we're going to call it, what do we call it? Map parent, like so. Now everything will be inside the map parent, and before we reset this, let's set our camera to a better angle. Of course, later on we'll have a movable camera within the scene, but that's not necessary for now. Let's give it a 90 degrees top-down view, like so. And let's copy this component, because when we exit out of play, it's gonna undo itself. And now we can click. And now our level generates. Actually could move the camera slightly to the side. Set as 3. Actually, maybe a little more. Okay. Now that we generate the map, what we want to do is click on each individual piece. Of course, the pieces are not very visible, so let me just see if I can create a quick texture in Paint for each block, just so we can see each separate block. I hope I don't actually have to UV the cube, because that would be annoying. So grass, tile, and then just do this for the brown, dirt, tile. Okay, go away, Paint. Where are we? Images. Okay. Now let's go into our prefab for the tile. Open the grass block and see how that's gonna. Where are we? Images. Please work. Oh, yes, it does. Great. Well, that saves us a lot of extra effort. Okay. So now we can clearly see each individual map piece. So that's going to make the map editor slightly easier to manage. So next thing we want to do is we want to be able to click on either of these images and be able to then replace any of these blocks on the map. So first thing we need to do is we're going to quickly go into our script folder, check out the map editor, and open our map tile. And what we'll be doing here is, by default, we'll be setting the entire map to the green block. So we'll do set, I guess we can call it set tile, set node, like so. And it's going to be of type void. And what this will do is it sets the default map block, like so. Now, what the default block will do is it will loop through every single block that we already have, and we'll do tile types I dot set active, and it's going to set them to false, and it will set the one that's at position 0 to true. So that's the grass one. So when we first load in the default map, it will open up just the first tile, like so. Now let's just quickly check if the prefab has everything attached. Yes, it does. And we will call set tile after we spawn in our block. What we want to do here also is, for now, let's store in our height and width and block ID. Now, block ID is going to be basically what is going to be either a 0, 1, or 2. Actually, let's put it into an enum so it's easier to visualize. So we'll just do terrain type, same way we did with the level. And it'll have either, so it's either going to be grass, dirt, or path. Type of terrain, like so. So when we first set our tile, we will pass through our X, we'll pass in our y, we will also pass in, we will also set our type of terrain to grass by default. We don't need the block ID in that case. And of course, our height is going to be equal to the x, width is going to be equal to our y, like so. So here we'll just pass in the x and pass in the y, like so. And now we have correctly, now we're correctly selecting the block. Now I'm going to move this out into its own function, so that's going to be called reset blocks, because we'll have to actually run this every single time we want to click on a block to change it to a different block. And then we'll create a new function called void set new block type. So this is what we'll call every time we click on that block with a new block type. And we'll simply just pass in an integer of type block ID. And what we will do here is we will, where are we? Let's change this slightly. So the block that we set as active is actually going to be just the terrain type of type integer. And we will do this more than once, so I'm just going to put it separately. So set the correct block. So there we go, set the correct block. So what happens here is when we first create the block, we reset all of the blocks. So we disable them. We will set everything by default to grass. And then we will set it by the correct type of terrain. And the exact thing will happen here. So what's going to happen here is we'll set the correct type. Of course, before we do that, we need to reset all the blocks. And now that we've done this, we will set the block ID to be equal to our type of terrain. So we'll do our type of terrain is equal to, and how do I cast it into an integer? Because I don't remember. Okay. That's okay. So for now, I'm gonna do it the easiest possible way that I can think of, and I'll look into it later. So if our block ID is 0, I'm just gonna create two sets of else and ifs. There you go. But this is essentially what the other code would have done, but way quicker. Like so. Well, okay, now that we have this, we can now set up our blocks by clicking on them. So let's just go into our map editor and let's create a new script. We're going to call it just going to call it game editor. Terrible naming. Okay, now in here we will handle all of our behaviors with mouse clicks and so on. So first we'll need an update, and in the update we will handle mouse clicks. Like so. And here we will have a reference to a text. So we'll go using Unity engine.ui. Now, first text that we'll store is private text selected block text. Just gonna set it as null so it doesn't give us any errors if it's because it's undeclared. Now on start, our selected block text is going to be equal to selected block, and then we'll just type in no, none dot text, like so. Now, when we click on each block, based on their ID, that's what the selected block is going to be. Of course, we have to store the ID as well. So let's actually create a string array, and we're going to call it the selected names. And we will also add private int the selected ID. And currently selected ID. We'll just default it to a value that doesn't exist in our scope. And we'll actually preset the selected name. So we'll just do selected names is equal to a new string array. We need only 3, and we'll straight away declare them. And we'll literally just copy this over. So our first one's going to be, of course, our grass. Our second one's going to be dirt, and third one's going to be path, like so. Okay. Now that we have this, we can create a function that will let us select. So select block, public void select block, and it will take in an integer of block ID. And what this will essentially do is it will do currently selected ID is going to be equal to block ID, like so, and our selected block text is going to be equal to selected names at our currently selected ID, like so. And this will update the text here, and we'll make sure that we have the correct block selected. Now, so that when we end up raycasting, we can change it to that specific block. Now, in here, we'll just do, so to do our raycast, we'll first take our input, which is the get mouse button down, and then we're going to set it to 0 because 0 is left click. And here we will then create a raycast. So raycast hit, ray, and then we'll just get the main camera, because we only have one camera in this entire scene, like so. And we will check if our raycast has hit anything. So we'll do physics raycast, and we'll just do ray out hit, like so. And then if hit dot collider is not equal to null, so if our object has a sort of collision, and then we'll also check if our currently selected ID is not a 999, which is our default value that we show. Then we can just call in our hit.transform, and we can get the component, which is our editor tile, like so, and we can run the set new block. Is it not public? Oh, get child component. There we go, like so. And the integer that we're going to pass is our ID, like so. Now with this, it should work fine. Editor, map editor generator. There we go, like so. Let's add in our text in here. Oh, that's right. We need to set up the buttons as well. So for the free images, we will add a new component of type button, and we'll drag again the map editor inside of it. And for each of them, we can just call the set block. However, we will have to change the ID. So the first one stays at 0, second one, third one is 2, and that's based on the positions of the blocks in our terrain type. Now we generate the level. If we click on dirt and we click anywhere on the map, it changes it to that specific block. So I'll have to go back to paint and change this because the path looks terrible. But yeah, so now we can start drawing the. Oh, it's because it's casting shadows. Because the other tile blocks are slightly lower. Let's actually go into prefabs, editor, open this, and for the path, I'm actually gonna set it to 1. There you go, just like all the other blocks. Let's see how it's gonna look like now. Yeah, it looks way better now. Although it's way thicker than the other blocks, but that's fine, I guess. So now we can draw every map like how we want. But what we really want to do next is add a way to select which level we're going to change. So each time we change a level, it will regenerate a level. Well, it will let us generate the new level. And each time we click generate level, it will either reset it or not. So first thing that we're going to do is in here, we're just going to create a private game object, and we're actually, so all we have to do is, before we start generating our map, we'll create a new function called private void delete map. And what we'll do is we'll do a for each loop. Now, what we'll do is for each editor tile. So that's going to be our block in our map blocks. We're just going to destroy all of them before we run our generate map. So here we will do in delete map always before. And what we'll do is block dot. So we'll do destroy. We'll do block dot. Yeah, the game object. Like so. Now the question is, will this give us any errors? We will see in a second. So let's. Okay. Okay. So we'll do if map blocks is higher than 0. So we're only going to run it if there's actually a block inside of our map, and that should hopefully fix this problem. Let's give it a try. So, oh, that's right. So the problem now is that basically this line of code has to be run before anything else. That was the problem. So the reason why there was a problem was because we can't delete something that doesn't exist and we didn't allocate any space towards it. Although I don't want to have it before, because that means we'll allocate a new slot every time we are about to do this, and this is not what we want to do. So we want to do, if it's not 0, and actually we'll just check if map blocks is not null. So if it's not nothing, then go ahead and run the code, but if there is something, then don't do it. It should work. Yeah, there we go. So now this runs successfully. We can put some blocks, and we can, if we press this, this will generate a new brand new level. We might want to have a pop-up message asking a user. I'll just make a comment to that. Add a pop-up message if user is sure to delete or not first. So just something for us to keep an eye on later. So now we want to be able to save our level to our levels folder that we've created. So now that I think about it, the way we did our levels makes no sense. Well, it'll have to be slightly changed. So if we go into our level script in here, now we don't need this or any of these, in fact. But what we do need is we need a public list, and it's going to be of type integer, and that's going to be the block IDs is equal to new list. We will also need to save the height and the width, so that when we generate the map in our level, we'll check against the height and width, and we'll just set it to what the blocks IDs were at before, which will make it so we don't have any problems with it. Now, I said that we want to have 4 levels, so let's just create 4 separate levels, and we'll call each level by their number. So I'll have level 1, 2, 3, 4. By default, they should have all of their values empty because we haven't filled in the levels just yet. Now, we should have a way to reset the level and the level data first. So we'll just do a simple public void reset level. And what this will do is it will do clear our list, so block IDs dot clear, and we'll set our height and width to some kind of a default value. So actually, let's just create a private int const default map size. Wrong way around. Like so. And we're going to set that to, let's just say 10. 10 seemed like a really nice number, so we'll set up height to default map size. And we'll do the exact same for the width when we reset the level. So once we're in the editor, we've selected everything. We have our level selected. We need an option to save it. So if we go into the editor, we need to have a new function called save level. Now, this will take a currently active level, and that also means we need to store every level that we have in the game. So we'll do a private level, and that's going to be an array of levels. And we will have an integer called currently selected level. So this is the ID for the currently active level. List of all available levels. Selected block text. List of preset messages. The ID of selected block. There we go. So what we're going to do here is in save level, we'll do levels and currently selected levels. And what we'll do is we'll add, yeah. So what we'll do is, so for our level, there are three things, well, several things we need to save. So public void save. So we'll just create a new function called save, and we'll pass in some information through. So we'll pass in the int x, int y, or should we just do it in the function there? Yeah, let's just do it there for now and change it. So height is going to be equal to, and this is where we need to have access to our map editor. So what I'm going to do in the map editor is just create a public static map editor generator, and we're just going to call it instance. And then we'll make a new awake function, and we're going to say instance is equal to this. So now in our map editor, we can very simply, where are we? We'll just do map editor generator dot instance dot, and then we can get our height and the width. Of course, we haven't made them accessible, so let's make them accessible, but we're only going to have our get. We will not have an option to set the value. So we'll just do height, and we'll do the exact same thing for width, like so. So with this, we have the width and the height of the level saved into our object is scriptable. And now we need to save all of the IDs. So if we just go into the for each loop that we've created before in side of here, where are we? Yeah. So we'll need a reference to map blocks as well. So, whoa, go away. And where is our game editor here? So let's just grab the instance, capital M, copy this here, and instead of course destroying, we'll just add them to levels. So levels currently selected level ID dot what is it called? Block IDs dot add, and we'll just add block. Actually not block, because we need the ID of the block. So we'll type in block dot do we have the block ID? No, we don't, but we have the enums. And the enums are called type of terrain block. And of course, that still gives us an error because we have to cast it as an integer. So it works. So now with this working, I'm just quickly going to go to Paint and create a little save icon. So let's open up Paint and create a simple icon for this. So if we think of a saving icon, we think of this like little blue cassette. Now, that being said, I'm really bad at drawing, and so it's gonna look pretty bad. Yeah, but I guess yeah, looks great. I take it back. I'm actually a genius, pen genius. So this is going to be the save icon, and now we're just going to drag it into our images folder, like so. And let's just select all of the code into our save as. So again, we're going to attach a button component here, drag in our map editor, and here we'll just do select level. Now, by default, we will have our currently selected level to be set to 0, which is going to be level 1. Oh, can't be here. And actually, let's prepare the levels while we're at it as well. So if we go into our scriptable levels and we drag in every single level, now we have Oraval levels functioning. Just going to quickly set values to some of these yellow warnings because they're annoying. Basically, the yellow warnings don't actually mean that something's broken. It's only the red warnings that you usually have to care about. It's just that there is a little bit of a miscommunication between the compiler and the engine. But by just giving a value, it fixes it. Ah, okay, I need to finish soon, but we've done a fair chunk of this, if I say so myself. So let's see if it's going to work now. So by default, we have level 1 loaded in. So if we go into our prefabs, not prefabs, scriptable objects levels, we select our first level. We see that currently it's blank. Let's generate the level. Let's change some boxes and let's press the save button. Now, as you see, we have set the height, width, and we have 100 blocks. Now, this is correct because 10 times 10 is 100. And we'll see that most of these have a value of 0 because most of our blocks are grass, but there are a few 2s and 1s because those are the few blocks that we've placed. When we close to play, we still have our values here. So that means that the map selector works. Now, what we really have to add now is we have to have a way to switch the levels. So we'll add this and a way to add width and height that can be changed into our level. So I'm going to add this real quick. So we'll create a brand new panel in our panel editor. Like so. Maybe a little bit more smaller. So this is going to be our width and height panel. We also still need one more panel for setting the path, because drawing the path is not the same as making our AI move around the path. And that might not be what the player who's going to create the level will intend in the first place. So they will be two separate elements. Also, it's way easier to do it that way, actually. So we'll have a text box input field. There we go. Now, we'll have two sets of input fields. One is going to be for inputting our height, and the other one's going to be for inputting our width. And above each one of these, we'll just have some text explaining what it is. So let's actually use, text height and text width, like so. Now here I'm just going to attach a vertical layout group so we don't have to mess around with any of this, and I'm automatically going to make it scale based on this specific panel. Now I'm just going to set this panel to be within our bounds, and then map height. We're just going to add some text, make it stay this size. Actually, no, 14 was good. And then map width. Now I'm going to set the text to 10. Where do we put the... There we go, text. We just set it to... Why is it not... Oh, there we go. Placeholder 10. Like so. Now, this we'll have to make sure that it only takes the numbers, nothing else. So there's going to be some error checks. And this section we'll have to make sure that on value change will run some piece of code. So we can just run that. On value change, we're just going to do what's public int. We're just going to call it set level, like so. Void. And what that's going to do is going to set an integer. There you go, set level. Is it possible to pass things through in here? That's the real question. I'm actually unsure about this. Where are we? Where are we? No, there must be a different way to do the selection. How do I get the value of the selection? Oh well, that'll be for next time. It's unnecessary for now. So yeah, I have 5 minutes left. So while I'm at it, I'll do some prep code for the docking system. So let's actually separate this into a header. So we'll just type in, this is going to be our level setting, and this is going to be our docking options, like so. And the first thing we're going to have is private transform docking panel. Just going to default it to null. Thank you. And by default, the docking panel will be set to true because it's the first thing that loads. Now, aside from docking panel, which is going to be this entire section, we'll have a button, which is going to be the docking button. Now, that button, on the other hand, will be set to false. So I'm just going to copy this piece of code here and docking button. Now, docking button will be in the exact same position as the docking panel. So what's essentially going to happen is when we turn it off, this will disappear and our button will become visible instead. So let's create a little button right in the corner. And we're just going to call it button add docking to it. And then when we click on it, it will enable our code. Now, what do we have? What's the problem? What do you mean currently doesn't exist? Did I just delete something that I shouldn't have? Of course. So let's quickly create a new void, public void undocking out. So, and what docking out will do is it will disable the bottom and it'll enable it, but now we need the reverse of this function, which is going to be the docking in. So this will be when we click on this button from the open panel, and the other one's going to be from the close panel. Let's add some comments real quick into the code, and then we can call it quick. So handles in user inputs within the editor scene, the panel that stores editor tools, button that appears when editor panel is invisible. It stores the ID of selected block, sets up the default sets the ID of selected block, makes the editor tools panel visible, makes the editor tools panel invisible. Now in next part we'll definitely add the camera movements, so we can actually change the height, and we'll of course add the height stuff in. And then sets the level ID based on currently selected level, saves the current level. What else do we have? Handle mouse click, and that's it for this one. And I guess that's it for now. Yeah, like I said, next part should be the final part for the editor, and then we can go back to making the game. Actually, before that, we will set up the main menu so we can select either of our 4 levels, and then we'll slightly rework the game code, and then we're gonna start making more towers for the game.